my seat to Jamaica. It was lovely.
I should be getting kickbacks
Just
from
to
the Jamaican
shuffle over
Tourist
to the
Board.
left slightly on the chair. Thank you very much. There you go.
Sorry, you should.
I should be getting kickbacks from the Jamaican Tourist Board.
You should indeed. What drew you to this project?
Sorry, one second.
Oh,
Just
oh.
make sure the guys are ready. Speed here.
Speed.
Okay, when you're ready.
What drew you to this project?
Well, lots of different things drew me to it, but I think primarily I was fascinated by the influence that Bob has had in the world since his death. There's no other musician who has had the kind of influence that he has. He's not just revered as a, like John Lennon saying, as a great musician, as a great star. He's also, in a lot of parts of the world, seen as practically a religious figure, as a prophet, as a philosopher. And then in the developed world, in Britain, in America, in Europe, he's seen as a sort of symbol of rebellion, equal to Che Guevara. Really, there's like if you go to Camden Market, there's two people who are on every T-shirt. It's Che Guevara and Bob Marley, and that's because he's this icon of rebelliousness, of being anti-establishment, I suppose, and also because he smoked a lot of marijuana, and so people think that's a sort of cool image. He's the sort of the focus of people's love of pot. But I think that what really struck me was when I was in Uganda making The Last King of Scotland a few years ago, was going into the slums of Kampala and seeing that there was Bob Marley pictures everywhere, his mural everywhere, the lyrics spray painted on the wall, and realising that people were really engaged with him as though he was a spiritual figure. And then I started researching and realising that was the case all around the world. And I thought, well, why is that? And why is it we don't know more about Bob Marley? And it's because I think he's the third world superstar. He's the only one of the great figures of popular music who came from the developing world. Nobody else, Elvis maybe grew up poor, but he grew up poor and white in the richest country in the world. Whereas Bob grew up in a shack, sleeping on an earth floor, and could have ended up being, a subsistence farmer. And yet he didn't. But he used that knowledge, understanding of poverty and being an outsider in his music, so people all around the world, no matter what their circumstances, can relate to him.
And it was interesting that he chose, after he'd been to the States, he chose to return to Jamaica to be free. I mean, most people go to America.
Well, I think he went to America in 1967 because he couldn't make a living making music in Jamaica. And like a lot of people, he went on that economic migration, like his mother had before him a few years before. And he went to Delaware. He worked driving a forklift truck in the Chrysler car plant. And he was there for almost a year. And then he was just miserable the whole time he was there. And he realised, I think that was the thing that made him realise, I am a musician. I can't deny it. There's nothing else I can be. I'm going to have to make it work for me. I'm going to have to earn a living doing it. So he went back to Jamaica. And it's really from that point that the great flowering of creativity happens.
Is there anything that you learned about Bob Marley that surprised you?
There's so many things that surprised me. I mean, I think from talking to his white cousins and his half sister, people who can tell you about this whole other side to the Marley family, which is a sort of very conservative, upright, British, white, Jamaican background, which is not what you associate with Marley at all.
No.
There's that whole side of it really surprised me. The other thing was that I was amazed by how determined and hard-working he was. That actually you have this image that he's this dope-smoking, kind of completely laid back, completely sort of Caribbean in his attitude person, but he's not. He's actually driven, and he's prepared to do almost anything to get his music heard. And that really surprised me, actually, how much he was kind of general to his band, and that he would make them rehearse, and how he would go on a tour even if it was not going to earn any money, because he knew that would help him get set up for the next tour or the next record. And he was always thinking ahead and thinking, how is my career going to progress? How am I going to reach a wider audience?
If you could meet Bob Marley, what would you ask him?
The thing about Bob is that I think he really hated giving interviews. And there only are a tiny handful of interviews with him, which is one of the reasons there's so much mystique about him, and one of the reasons it was hard to make the film, actually, because he doesn't explain himself. You have to ask other people to explain him. So you don't. It's not like he's somebody, you know, that when you show lots of footage of the man and you sort of understand him, you have to build up a mosaic picture through lots of different voices, all the voices of the people who knew him. So I suspect if I asked Bob a question, he would probably refuse to answer me, or he would say something about Jah Rastafari and sort of refuse to engage with me. But I would love to know. I would love to know about his illness at the end, because he died very, very young.
Did.
And I think he knew he was ill before he collapsed and was taken to hospital. And everyone said, "Oh my God, he's got cancer," but they didn't. I suspect he must have known. He had so much.
He knew
cancer,
his body.
and I think he kept it from everybody because he thought, I actually just want to keep going. I want to keep going, and enjoy doing the thing that I'm doing, which is performing, reaching a wide audience. And that's what I'd like to know. Did you know?
One of the surprising things was he came over as a very modest man. He agreed to not be the headline, but the backing.
Yes, well, I think that's part of
in the Commodores.
Yes, I think he was very modest. He really wasn't someone who was driven by fame or by desire for riches. He really was driven by desire to get his message out.
Right.
And he was a religious man, and I think that's the thing that sets him apart from almost any other sort of popular musician. And also, he wasn't a hypocrite. He actually believed what he was saying. And he really did give away most of his money. There used to be lines of people around the block.
I saw, yes.
When he was in residence in his house in Jamaica. And he lived in a sort of commune with a whole band all together. And he always had a single bed. He never had a double bed. And he had this sort of whole thing, of living a modest life. And so he'd hand out his money. His business manager would describe how infuriating it was to sort of do all these great deals for Bob and have all this money coming in, and then it would all just disappear because he'd give it away to people.
You've made excellent feature films like The Last King of Scotland, but really good documentaries. I mean, I really liked Touching the Void, and of course this one is absolutely excellent. Which do you prefer?
Well, they're both very different, aren't they? They both give you different kinds of challenges and different pleasures to making them. You know, a documentary like this is a kind of work of journalism, really. You're investigating someone. It's a quest. Who is this man? I want to find out. Whereas making a feature film is more creative, I suppose, that you're involved from the beginning, deciding on every little thing about costumes and about the way it's going to look, and you can tackle different sorts of feelings, I think, in a feature film than you can in a documentary. So I suppose I often say one's very right brain and one's very left brain. And I think ideally I'd like to keep doing both.
But you chose the locations for this in the same way that you would for Marley, in the same way you would for a feature.
But really, in this, it's the content that's so important in this. Particularly in this film, I tried not to put my own stamp on it too much. In a way, I wanted it to be very simple and for the material and the story to speak for itself. Whereas in a feature film, you're obviously trying to endow it with some style and with a feel and a look that's unique. Whereas in this, I'm not really that concerned with the way it looks. I want it to look as beautiful as it can, and there's obviously very beautiful shots in the film, but it's really about content and about the story.
Right. And what is your next film?
I'm making a feature film called How I Live Now, which is a dark, dark teen romance set in what you think is the present day, but turns out not to be the present day. It turns out to be a kind of alternate reality. And it stars Saoirse Ronan, who's a fantastic young Irish actress.
And that's a feature film then,
That's a
isn't
feature film
it?
starting shooting at the end of June.
Right. And after that?
Oh God, I need a holiday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.